Hello everyone, yassas, merhaba, and welcome to From Root to Vine. For this episode, we're on location for a 2-day extravaganza at the Cypriot Wine Festival and Business Expo, which took place back in June. The Cypriot Wine Festival is the biggest global Cypriot event outside of Cyprus and has been a staple of the community here in the UK for the past 40 years. Through live music, dance, traditional cuisine and wine, it offers a perfect insight into the wonderful vibrancy and warmth of Cypriot culture. It also serves as a necessary reminder of the importance of coming together to ensure our heritage continues to thrive in the UK. All of the conversations you will hear discuss diaspora Cypriot identity. Whilst I was joined by a diverse group of guests, all with unique stories to tell, one thing remains the same throughout. Being Cypriot is cemented in uniqueness and love, and pride for our roots is at the heart of it all. I couldn't think of a more perfect place for our first live podcast event, and it was a real privilege to be part of it. Hi Adrian.
Hi Maria.
Thank you for being here. Welcome to From Root to Vine. Welcome to the Cypriot Wine Festival as well.
Thank you. Thanks for the invitation and the opportunity.
Absolutely. You're my first guest of the event, and I feel like it's the perfect guest to have, given your role with NEPOMAK, which we'll come on to, and all the great work you do for the diaspora. First, I wonder if you could just introduce yourself, tell me a little bit about you and your Cypriot roots.
So I'm Adrian Patsalos. I was elected as president of NEPOMAK UK, which is the Cypriot youth of the community. Myself, I was born in South Africa, raised in Cyprus, and I've been a Londoner for the past 11 years.
Nice. Do you know what? Because I've never asked you about your accent, but I've always thought, is that a South African accent?
Yes, it is.
Nice.
It's becoming part of the diaspora again.
Yeah.
Was a great experience for me, understanding what my parents and grandparents went through. And obviously, starting working for the Cypriot Federation 4 years ago got me more keen to get more involved in NEPOMAK. I was involved before attending events, but wasn't really involved with the committee and the events and all of that. So yeah, that started 4 years ago, and here I am today.
Lovely. What was your relationship like with your Cypriot roots when you were growing up? Obviously, you were in South Africa and then Cyprus, and now being in the UK, so you've experienced a lot of different types of communities. How did that kind of inform your own identity?
Well, it was an interesting journey because I was always the other in a way. So in South Africa, to the South Africans, I was the Greek, because many of them didn't even know where Cyprus was.
Yeah.
Went to Cyprus, I was the South African.
Yeah.
And then coming to London, everything was fine until Brexit, and I'm the European. So there's always been a label attached to who I am and where I'm from.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's always the way when you're part of a diaspora, or you're quote unquote not really from somewhere, which I feel like all Cypriots have experienced. So you're the president of NEPOMAK UK, as you said, so an organisation bringing together young Cypriots to promote our culture and heritage and encourage networking. So what are some of the different initiatives that NEPOMAK is pursuing, and kind of what the aim is?
So, as you said, the main objective is to connect young Cypriots, both in the region that we operate as NEPOMAK UK, but also on a global aspect. Every summer we have trips to Cyprus where they subsidize. We send delegates from all regions globally where they learn Greek, they go on excursions, they get to connect to their roots, the Cypriot roots, and they also attend the World Conference of Overseas Cypriots. In the UK, we organize a variety of events, social, cultural, political, and the latest addition we've added is we're starting to collaborate with other diasporas. So we've had events with the Armenian youth, the Jewish youth, and this year's our 20th year running. It's our 20th anniversary. So we're trying to kind of dial up the excitement this year.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really nice to see you guys collaborating with different diasporas. I attended just last week or the week before your event with the Jewish diaspora and the Jewish Union of Students, and I think it's always nice, helps put things into perspective when you can relate to other diasporas and see that actually we share so many similarities in kind of our heritage and our history.
Yeah, I mean, as you said, there's a lot in common. Obviously, Cypriot people have a very difficult past with the invasion. There's been a lot of struggle but equally the Jewish diaspora with the Holocaust and all these things. There are a lot of similarities in our histories that bring us together and gives us the opportunity to network and learn about each other.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really lovely for solidarity. So why is NEPOMAK and organisations like NEPOMAK, why are they important for the Cypriot community?
Well, I think obviously I've always been a fan of history, and knowing your roots, knowing where you came from is extremely important. It's what makes us unique, different to everyone else, and being different is not necessarily a bad thing.
Yep.
So I think as a youth organisation, we kind of understand how best to connect young Cypriots who don't necessarily understand the politics to much extent, don't know a lot about the tragic past of Cyprus, but eventually get to know that. But, for young people, there needs to be a social aspect, they need to have a good time, and as time passes by, we reinforce those messages that our country's still divided, is still occupied, and as a youth, it's important that we continue the struggle for a free, united Cyprus, where all Cypriots can live together peacefully.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more. And I think as a young Cypriot, it's sometimes really difficult to kind of understand that and wrap your head around the history and the past. So having organisations like NEPOMAK exist is really helpful for that. What was kind of your experience growing up in terms of your own learning and understanding of kind of Cypriot identity? And that could be the history, the politics. Is it something you were taught, I don't know, like via family or education? How did that kind of happen for you?
Well, I think the pillars of any Cypriot family are usually the grandparents.
Absolutely, yes.
So a lot of that came from my grandmother, who I grew up with, a refugee from Famagusta, lost the house as a result of the Turkish invasion. And, when we moved from South Africa, family wanted to put me in a private school because English was my first language then. Yeah. My grandma was like, no, has to go to Greek school, has to learn the language, has to learn the traditions, the culture. And I think that priceless bond between the grandchild and the grandparents is such a powerful thing of our culture and traditions.
100%, I couldn't agree more. I always say it's a really uniquely special relationship between Cypriot grandchildren and their grandparents, and it's just the most wonderful thing. And I was really privileged to have my grandparents. I still have one of my grandparents around, and you get it all from them being part of the diaspora. So yeah, we love to celebrate grandparents on this podcast. I don't think we've had an episode where we haven't mentioned them in some form, so that's really lovely.
It's good to hear.
Absolutely. So obviously NEPOMAK, you're the president of NEPOMAK UK, but NEPOMAK is a global network for Cypriots in multiple diasporas across the world. What have you learned from being part of kind of the global network of NEPOMAK and interacting and networking with other diasporas?
So I think the main thing is that they are very different experiences depending where you're coming from.
Yeah.
I think the UK diaspora is quite lucky in a way that since the invasion, Greek and Turkish Cypriots have lived amongst themselves in the diaspora. It's a norm for us to peacefully coexist.
Yeah.
So the idea of a free united Cyprus isn't that alien. We can see it happening quite easily. Yeah. Where I think the diasporas in Greece, and Greece, but also South Africa, America, Australia, because they're relatively small, to kind of survive, they've become very strongly linked with the Greeks from mainland Greece.
Yes.
And they're much closer to the Greeks from Greece rather than the Turkish Cypriot compatriots. So they don't really, I think it's more alien to them, even for Cypriots in Cyprus, because it's divided. The idea of reuniting, there's some fear because it's unknown. Everyone fears the unknown. Where for the UK diaspora, I found moving to the UK, that was a privilege to kind of see that, they've peacefully coexisted for a long time. This is possible and it can happen.
Absolutely. I think I always say it's a real privilege being part of the UK diaspora, especially if you grow up in London, which is like even more connected because I think the highest percentage of Cypriots outside of Cyprus are in London. So it is a huge privilege. And like you said, in Cyprus, there's the physical bordering process, which, whether you would like to or not, you just can't because there is that barrier in place. So the fact that we can grow up around each other, we go to school with each other, we have bi-communal friendships, relationships, I think is so lovely. And yeah, I guess that is missing partly in other diasporas. I think it's really interesting what you said about how it's more normal for some diasporas to be connected to Greece than to our Turkish Cypriot brothers and sisters, which is so strange.
Well, look, I think both are equally important because Cyprus didn't magically appear in 1960. Cyprus pre-existed before then.
Yeah.
And we can never get rid of the links that Greek Cypriots have to Greece and Turkish Cypriots have to Turkey. And I think looking forward, we need to respect our past and respect our differences. Not use them as a reason to clash and conflict. We just need to respect where we're different and embrace our common identity. We're all Cypriots. Even if it doesn't matter if you speak Greek, if you're Christian or Muslim, it doesn't matter. We need to focus on what brings us together and the common ground rather than what's different between the 2 or 3 or 4 communities that Cyprus has.
Amen. I couldn't agree more. And I think you're right. I love that a lot of Cypriots are reclaiming their identity and they want to define themselves as Cypriot, which is amazing. But we can't ignore kind of the history of Greece, history of Turkey, and I think kind of viewing our identity with an awareness of the quote-unquote mainlands as well is important because, they've impacted it, they'll continue to impact it, so we can't just ignore it.
Absolutely.
Is there anything that you've learned from interacting with maybe mainland Greek people or mainland Turkish people and conversations you might have had about being Cypriot?
Well, I think the main thing with interacting with Greek or Turkish people is that the people aren't that fussed. People aren't that bothered. I mean, Greece went through a terrible financial crisis. Turkey's going through one now.
Yeah.
On a day-to-day basis, they face serious problems. They aren't bothered about, what's going on politically. Everyone's been battling for survival. So I think our anger and our disappointment over the years is not towards Turkish people. It's against the army, the politicians who, despite the people expressing the willingness to move forward and reunite the island, the governments have ignored that and put barriers up instead of breaking them down. The people want this 48-year-long problem to end. The young people are heartbroken of seeing our grandparents grow old and older and older, and some of them pass away and never have the opportunity to go back to their village, their towns. I think that's where we've learned and been bothered about the issue because the people we love, we've seen them suffer. We've seen them lose invaluable time. For us, another 5 years isn't a big deal. But for them, it's a matter of life and death.
That's so true.
I think the people aren't that bothered. The politicians need to get in a room and sort this out.
Yes, if only it was that easy. You would think so, wouldn't you? You would think so.
Well, we can only keep pressurising.
Yeah, we can only hope. No, I completely agree. And it reminds me, again, going back to grandparents, what my granddad, my papa, always used to say was, it's not the everyday people's fault what's happening in Cyprus. It's the powers above that unfortunately aren't cooperating like we want them to. So yeah, it's important to remember because ultimately people just want peace. Everyone just wants to get along. People don't have time for it, like you said. Everyone's got their own struggles.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So when we think about Cypriot identity, I think everyone can agree it's very complex and it's very personal as well, and we can define it in many, many different ways. For you personally, how do you define Cypriot identity? Maybe generally, but also from your experiences?
Look, as a young Cypriot, I completely recognize the need for us to embrace the Cypriot identity.
Yeah.
And looking forward and hoping for a free united Cyprus, I do see that as the way forward. I do see that as the common ground. But I believe that a free united Cyprus needs to be built on mutual respect. It needs to be built on how our grandparents used to live amongst each other and respect the fact that on Sunday some people are going to go to the church, some people are going to go to the mosque, some people are passionate about Greek culture and all Turkish traditions. We shouldn't hold that against each other. So if someone wants to self-define as Greek Cypriot or Turkish Cypriot, it's not the end of the world. As long as we embrace that common word in both those definitions. People spend too much time clashing about the two different words in those definitions, where it doesn't matter if you're Greek Cypriot or Turkish Cypriot, Armenian or Maronite Cypriot, we're all Cypriot. So it's self-definition for a reason. People can define however they want. as long as we embrace what we have in common and don't use the differences as a cause to clash and keep on dividing our island even further.
Yeah, that's a really lovely sentiment. Thank you for sharing that. And you're totally right. It's the Cypriot that's important. It's not the Greek or Turkish. You know, the Greek and Turkish is it's like the prefix to it. So we should have an awareness of it, but that's not what it shouldn't be what divides us.
But look, to some people, it's very important. And I think we need to respect that.
Yeah.
If people are really passionate about their roots, that's fine. But I think the way forward is both respecting the past and embracing the future. You can't do one or the other. And in many times I've been told off for saying I'm Greek Cypriot. But at the end of the day, my ID says I'm Cypriot. Most Cypriots, if not all, recognize that the Republic of Cyprus has existed since 1960. And that's the way forward. We need to embrace what we have. And at this stage, really, it's really important for all Cypriots to stand up to safeguard what we have, because there's an imminent threat wanting to permanently divide the island. And we can't allow that to happen, because we need one Cyprus. We need the country to be reunited, people to peacefully coexist. No one wants partition. The people don't want partition. And the young people can't afford to allow that to happen. So we spend way too long fighting about the different ways to define as a Cypriot. As long as the word Cypriot is there, I don't care what's before or after it, really.
I agree, totally. I agree, actually. And I always say that it's not my responsibility or my right to tell people how they want to identify. I might identify as one thing, and that's what fits me and that's what resonates with me. But if someone else wants to identify something different, then, we don't have the right to tell other people that. All we can do is have conversations about it, find our similarities, and realise that as long as the Cypriots there, it's all that matters. It's all that matters, absolutely. Well, I think community is really important, and we've spoken about it a lot. What do you think the most important things for us that we can do in terms of fostering community for all Cypriots?
Well, I think the main thing as young members is to get involved. I think we underestimate the importance of just turning up.
Yeah.
I'm ever so grateful to my fellow officers in NEPOMAK and the committee members and the volunteers who contribute their free time, because we're all volunteers, none of us get paid to do this, to set up these events and organize them. And it takes a lot of time and effort. So all we're really asking for people to do as a starting point is to turn up. We've all been in that awkward situation. We don't know, we don't want to go to an event alone because it might, but when I joined, everyone was very welcoming. Everyone's welcoming. Turn up. You'll meet people very similar to you. Bring a friend along. They don't need to be Cypriot. I've got my friend from Camden who comes to all the Cypriot events. We've given him a Cypriot name. NEPOMAK, it's wide open to anyone who is Cypriot, who wants to learn about Cypriot culture and traditions. And I think at this point we need the support more than ever before, because we had 2 years of COVID where
of course,
we couldn't run our in-person events, we couldn't have the wine festival, we couldn't organize our trips to Cyprus. So we're currently going through a transition where we're kind of starting from scratch, and we need those who didn't have the opportunity to make the most out of NEPOMAK over the past years to come and make the double amount out of it now, because we're willing to give that, we're willing to provide that. But for us to bounce back stronger, I've always said, without our membership, we're nothing. So we're always open to feedback. If there's events the community want to see, the youth want to see, we can organize them as long as we get insight to what people's feedback is. So, any feedback, we have monthly meetings. If you're interested in attending and contributing more, we can let you know when those are happening. But on our social media, the event's always there. We have our 20th anniversary coming up, a celebration. So each opportunity, come along, and I'm sure there'll be something that NEPOMAK can do for you and mean to you, because I'm sure it means something different to every single one of us.
Yeah, true.
And what they make out of NEPOMAK will be different to the next person. There's not a single answer to that. But I think getting involved, and either it's NEPOMAK, or if you're into sports, there's Cypriot football teams that are desperate for support. Yeah. There are other community organizations. If you know which village or town your parents are from, you can get involved with them. Some of them are here at the wine festival today. All these organizations will eventually die off if people don't show the bare minimum interest.
Yeah, absolutely. You're totally right. Showing up is just like the first most important thing to do. And I think sometimes there's some fear, like you said, maybe you don't know anyone or it's like your first time and you don't really know what to expect. But I think from my personal experiences, who was that person, like as soon as you start doing it, you realise, why have I not done this sooner? And you meet your community, and there's nothing more lovely than meeting your community and getting to know each other and sharing your similarities and just being around essentially an extended family, which I think when all Cypriots come together, that's basically what it is.
Well, NEPOMAK is my London family. All my direct family are in Cyprus. So, if it wasn't for NEPOMAK, I would have been a lonely Cypriot. But thanks to NEPOMAK, I've found friends for life. Those trips, I haven't been on them, but from people that I've met that have gone on them, they say it's a life-changing experience. You'll have friends in Canada, in America, in Australia, in South Africa. You'll meet people that you'll have connections for life, and it's invaluable. And I would strongly encourage anyone to come check it out. And if there's any way we can improve it, let us know.
Absolutely. So in your experience, and I think this will be quite interesting because you've had a lot of different experiences with different countries. What are some of the ways that Cypriot culture presents itself either in the UK? Obviously you have the experience in South Africa. What are some of the, the usual things, how we see Cypriot culture?
Well, I think, unfortunately, the first thing attached to Cyprus is the word problem.
That's so true, yeah.
And, I think we're all longing for the day where that word isn't attached to Cyprus and being Cypriot. And as long as the occupation's ongoing, I think it's a problematic situation because we all have a relative that's either a refugee or experienced invasion, all of that. Yeah. But I think on a more positive note, it's the togetherness, the family bonds, the rich cuisine, culture, music. We're going to see a lot of that over this weekend, these bank holidays. And really, I think it's such a rich, for such a small island and nation, it has got such a rich kind of background to offer.
Yeah.
And either that's food, cuisine, activities, history, the people. Everyone's so welcoming here, no matter which store you go to. And I think that's a true representation of kind of being Cypriot and the community in general. Everyone is always willing to help someone. If someone's got a problem, you'll find 10 people that are willing to help out.
Yes.
And that really makes a huge impression on people that are not Cypriot. My non-Cypriot friends are always fascinated how everyone jumps up to help each other when someone's having a problem. And it's something in a good way they're jealous of, and we've even helped them in ways. I've got friends who were looking for a job, and I'm like, okay, I know Cypriot that can help you out, and I think it's something I'm really proud of my Cypriot heritage, that we care about each other, we care about our people, and not only we've seen it now with Ukraine, we've seen it before with Syria, because Cypriots have been through that themselves.
Yeah.
They can show empathy to people who are struggling.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. It's so lovely to be part of it and experience it. And I think you're totally right. So much comes out of such a tiny island, and sometimes I'm amazed. I'm like, wow, it's amazing that like all of this stuff comes from Cyprus, and it continues to come from Cyprus. So much more is being produced, and as the generations like transform, it's absolutely amazing. So it's really lovely how we see it manifest in all different kind of communities. We've spoken a lot about looking at the past to look towards the future and the present. What have you learned from interacting with the older generations, whether that be in your personal life or through your work with NEPOMAK? How can we bring the past into the present and future?
I think the most important value we can learn from them is to be humble.
Yeah.
No matter how much people achieve, no matter how far you get, it's being humble, remembering where you came from, what you've been through. Because you see a lot of older people that have achieved so much, but they always giving back to the community, they're always helping others. And at the end of the day, we're all human, I think it's very easy for success and power and influence to get to your head, but it's remembering we're all people at the end of the day. we all need to coexist. We need each other, you know. I don't think anyone's happy when they're on their own for too long. So I think this is where the community organizations, such as like the two community centers, the Greek Cypriot Brotherhood, the Cypriot Community Center Wood Green, play a vital role for being there for our older groups. And I think that's when NEPOMAK is so important for the younger UK Cypriots, because I'm sure people who have been born and brought up here feel different to British people because they have that other identity, they have that other roots, the things that the British friends will never understand.
Totally.
So you'll never be on the same page 100% with them, where with NEPOMAK, you'll find people that you will be on the same page. So I just think being humble, always being willing to help, and caring. I think the fact that they care, they care about their families, they care about their community, they care about their country, is something that sadly we don't see as much with the younger people. I think caring and just being aware of everyone around us.
Yeah, totally. I think there's a lot to learn always from the older generations, because they have a lifetime of experiences and knowledge. And the one thing I always say to people, young people, is please, if you're privileged enough to be around a lot of elderly people, if you have grandparents, just talk to them. Ask them about their experiences, ask them about, their hopes and what they've seen and what they hope to see, because it's such a wealth of knowledge and information, and if we don't have those conversations, then it's going to get lost. So that's why I would encourage everyone just to speak to the older generations. They have a lot of words of wisdom, and usually a lot of humor as well, so you'll get some funny stories. You get a lot of funny stories out of them as well. So you've mentioned it's the 20th anniversary of NEPOMAK this year. Congratulations, first of all. That's a really, really big achievement. How has NEPOMAK transformed in those 20 years, and what's the mission going forward?
So I think, it started off quite basic. I think initially the main objective was to exist and to branch out. So NEPOMAK UK is probably the only region that was created the same year as NEPOMAK Global.
Okay.
So I guess initially it was setting up in as many diasporas as possible, which, credit to all of those who've contributed to that journey. We're in 7 different regions now. Then initially they set up the Discovery program, where 18 to 22-year-olds would go over to Cyprus for 3 weeks, do Greek lessons and excursions to see the cultural heritage of the island, the history, the archaeological sites. But then there was a limbo, because, what happens from the 23 to 30-year-olds? So my predecessors worked really hard to establish the cultural trip, which is a 10-day long trip, where you just go out, and it's either second opportunity for those who didn't get on the Discovery program, or even those who have been on the Discovery program really benefit from going on the second trip as well. So those trips have been quite vital. But I think in the past few years, where we've developed even further, is that we've become more and more active in our regions, where before you would have 5 events a year, 10 events a year max. Now you're at the point where there's a lot more happening, and a much bigger variety, where before it was just social and political, because you could never avoid that. Now it's more looked into. There's more culture, there's more traditions, there's more music, there's more dancing, there's more lately there's more collaborations with other diasporas as well. So we get to meet other communities in London, and who knows what the next 20 years are holding for us. Yeah,
absolutely. As I said, it's an amazing achievement, and even in the short period that I've known NEPOMAK to exist, it's transformed so much, and you're expanding so much. So it's really exciting to see what you'll continue doing. And I mean, in a positive way, God knows what the next 20 years are going to bring. Hopefully some very, very positive things, no more pandemics, none of that. So it's really exciting. I want to talk to you about your t-shirt. I didn't know you were going to wear this, but I'm really glad. So you've got the Hands Off Cyprus campaign t-shirt on, which is amazing, and I would encourage anyone who's interested, research the hashtag Hands Off Cyprus. What's the origins of this campaign? Why is it important? Why should people know about it?
So the Hands Off Cyprus campaign is coordinated by the National Federation of Cypriots in the UK. Back in 2018, the Federation took a strategic decision to transition from organising many rallies in person in Trafalgar Square to kind of a more version of lobbying and pressurising British politicians. And we've seen the effect these campaigns have had. So what this campaign does, it tells the occupier, Turkey, to take its hands off Cyprus. So within 30 seconds, you put in your name, postcode, and email address, and there's a pre-drafted letter that pops up that you can amend if you want to. The letter talks about the need for a free united Cyprus, the need for any foreign troops or interference to come to an end after 48 years. We've seen how badly that went in 1974 with the invasion. And the need for the UK, who's a guarantor power of Cyprus's peace, to be more proactive in kind of forcing Turkey's key to unlock the door to a solution. So I would encourage everyone to visit the Federation's website, cypriotfederation.org.uk/MP. They can read the email, they can send us questions. But what's happened over the years is that, for example, many MPs were even born after the Turkish invasion.
Yeah,
so they've got no clue about what's happened in Cyprus and what the current state of play is. So one, it informs them. Two, it asks them to attend an event in July in Parliament with the Foreign Minister of Cyprus, Mr. Ioannis Kassoulidis. And thirdly, we've seen the ripple effect this has had with MPs becoming actively involved on the Cyprus issue. When the campaign started in 2018, there were 7 MPs that were on the all-party parliamentary group for Cyprus. Now there are 47.
Yeah.
So we've seen over the years how more and more MPs have become more proactive on the Cyprus issue. And the youth have played a vital role in this campaign going forward, because obviously the older generations aren't familiar with e-campaigns, with iPads, with websites.
Social media.
So it's been a lot of NEPOMAK members going over to Bapu and Yaya saying, come, give me your details, let me send this email for you. And, you know, we have to pay tribute to all those generations who collected petitions and letters for decades, and we never undermine all of that, but we need to keep up to date with how lobbying governments works. So the Federation's tried to modernize its ways of lobbying, and really these campaigns can only be successful if the communities support them. Last year, despite lockdowns and the barriers we couldn't engage with in person, we still reached 73% of MPs.
Wow.
So we're hoping to match that, hopefully pass it this year.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, really it takes 30 seconds of your time. It's really quick, really easy, and support the campaign, share it, spread the word.
Yeah, absolutely. Please support it. It's really important. And I think sometimes it's so difficult to understand how we can access like the big P politics, but with things like this, it's so easy. Like you said, it's just a click of a button, 30 seconds. And I think in light of the events happening in the north of Cyprus currently with kind of the Turkish government, it's more important now than ever to protect all Cypriots to exist peacefully on the island. So yeah, thank you for raising that. That's really, really important. I'm sorry, I just want to say, it's so classic. I think we're talking about really, really serious subjects, and all we've got is like some Greek tunes in the background, but that's just the epitome of the wine festival, so it's fine. It's all part of it. So what has been part of NEPOMAK taught you about your Cypriot roots?
Well, I think the main thing NEPOMAK has taught me is that we all have very different experiences of being connected to our roots and different level of involvements. And I think that's been really helpful to understand, because it helps us tailor our events, our initiatives for different level of kind of Cypriotness in a way. So you'll have people that are really clued on to the history, the culture, the complexity of the Cyprus issue and all of that. Then you have people that are coming who literally have no pre-involvement with their Cypriotness. So I think NEPOMAK has been an insight never to assume that people understand Cyprus, understand what's going on the ground, and really to be able to break it down as simply as possible for people to kind of understand, firstly, the desire for us to peacefully solve these things, because it's quite easy to get quite heated quite quickly, because everyone's passionate about it. Everyone can become really strongly opinionated about things. But the objective, I think, is something we can all agree on, that we want to peacefully coexist and we don't want any foreign interference. And it's as simple as that. How we get there, politicians can sort it out. But I think as a diaspora, as long as we can agree on the basics and embrace that, and be able to cater for that, because I think growing up in Cyprus, I just assumed everyone had the same knowledge as I did. But NEPOMAK kind of shook me and said, no, break it down, keep it simple, and get there gradually. Don't do too much too quickly when it comes to the complexity of Cypriot history.
Yeah, absolutely. You're so right. Like, never assume people's understanding, people's knowledge, people's views. And it's so easy to do that with anything, but especially with the situation in Cyprus. So, yeah, I think that's really important. Thank you for raising that. Well, I have one question left, and it's a question I ask all of my guests that come on from Root to Vine. And that question is, what is your favourite thing about your Cypriot roots?
Well, I think we spoke about it so much in this interview. It's family. It's family. I think the bond I've had with my geia, all my other grandparents passed away relatively young, but my one geia played such a vital role in not even defining me, helping me kind of understand and define as a Cypriot, but becoming the person I am today. The values that those generations carried of being humble and being genuine and being honest and caring about others and giving back, not only being on the receiving end of ends. I think that's my favorite thing about my Cypriot roots, and I'll always bore people about talking to them about how important that bond is. And I'm literally petrified when that generation goes, how capable we are to continue that. I hope that we can learn as much as we can now from them to be able to replicate that one day with our children and grandchildren in the future.
Thank you so much for sharing that. That's so lovely, and I couldn't agree more. Shout out to the Els and Bupples, man. They just do so much, and they're so precious and they're so vital. So yeah, thank you. That's really, really beautiful, and a lovely nod to your geia as well. So if people want to find NEPOMAK, if they want to get involved on socials or come to events, where can they find you guys? How can they get involved?
Our handle is nepomak.uk, Instagram, Facebook, website. Message us, email us, whatever's easier for you. Our next big event is on the 14th of July. We're having an anniversary celebration at the Brotherhood in North Finchley with the Foreign Minister, Mr. Ioannis Kassoulidis. And we will have more events towards the end of the summer once everyone's back from their holidays in Cyprus.
Yes, of course.
And we're also organising weekends away in Wales and Scotland. So if you're not based in London and you want to get involved, reach out. We'll send you more information about those. Again, any ideas, any feedback, more than welcome.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for coming on and having this conversation. It's been so enlightening, insightful to hear more about you, hear more about NEPOMAK, and thank you for your time and happy 20th anniversary.
Thank you, Maria. Best of luck with our podcast.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much to the Cypriot Wine Festival and Business Expo for the incredible opportunity. I can't wait to be back. I hope you enjoyed this and all of the conversations from the festival with my wonderful guests. I'll tag anything mentioned in this episode on Instagram and Twitter. You can find us on both at roottovinepod. Please don't forget to give us a follow and get involved in the conversation. You can also leave us a rating and review. It really does help us. I've been Maria Christodoulou. This podcast is produced by In-Depth Creative and music is by Dünya. See you on the next episode. Bye.